Welcome to the True North Podcast, where two practicing lightworkers get together every week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can follow your true north back to your true self. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Abby.
And I'm Ryan.
Hello, Ryan.
Hello, world.
Hello.
We're going to talk about crying today.
We are?
We are.
Are we going to cry today?
Probably. It's 2 fours talking about crying. I don't see how this doesn't end with just like we're swimming in tears by the end of this. No, we both had it. We've been talking about crying offline, and it's so interesting how those things kind of like align.
Yes.
I mean, I'm surprised that I'm still surprised when that happens.
I said that the other day. Like, I need to stop saying that. I should know by now.
Right. Every time like you pull an oracle card and you read thing and it makes sense to where you are in your life, you're like, oh, this is mind blowing. But why? Why? Of course.
Right.
Of course.
There it
should
is.
expect
There it
it
is.
to be what it is, but it's still just the awe and wonder of the world.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about your crying stuff, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, sure, I can. Although I shared the information with you, though, in response to your crying stuff. So I don't want to give away your story too much, other than you've been crying lately, and we're going to hear about that. But I have not been crying lately, to the point where I've taken notice, and it's bothering me.
That you're not crying?
That I'm not crying.
Is it like there are moments when you would normally cry that you're not? Or do you just like have a regular crying cadence that has dried up?
I have always been a crier, like a heavy, sobbing crier. Everything makes me cry. Books, movies, terrible things that happen to me. Anything, it doesn't matter. I just cry. And sometimes I would not know what I'm crying about. I would just have this big burst of sobs that I just needed to kind of get out of my body. And I'd stopped questioning it. Like when I was a kid, I just let it happen. And so I come to just rely on that being part of my process. So when I don't cry, I notice it. And it's not like I'm not crying at all. I have cries. There's moisture in the eyes. Tears come out. But it's not that good, solid, uncontrollable, like you just can't stop it cry. And as a 4, it bothers the shit out of me.
You just described that experience as good. Good was the first one of those good, solid, uncontrollable cries. You know how many people do not describe being in like uncontrollably crying as a good thing?
It's a good thing. I do. I want to cry. I like to cry. And it's, a lot has happened. I lost my grams, I lost a lot of my work in many ways. There have been some really big challenges that one would think, with grief would come crying. And I'm still waiting. So, that's how I feel about my crying. I don't know where it's gone, but it's certainly in there and needs to come out.
Do you think that those things, like the things that need to come out, have like an alternative way to come out? Like, could the emotions come out in a way that's not crying? You know what I'm asking? Like, crying is emotional release, but is there another way to release those emotions that maybe your body's like shifting gears to?
Laughing, I think, is on that same vibrational frequency.
Sure.
And while I have been laughing, I haven't been laughing enough at that level.
Good,
that
strong,
kind of
uncontrollable.
The good, strong, uncontrollable belly laughing. Like not enough to make up for this lack of crying. Mm-hmm.
That actually segues more perfectly into mine than the way that mine segues into yours.
Okay, well, let's hear it. Because
I am also a crier, which, side note, we can put a pin in this and come back to it. When you were saying I cry about everything, my first thought was there's one of my godkids cries about everything, and I don't see that as a good thing.
Wait, we're just HSPs. Well, come on.
I know. And just hearing you say that and having my inner conversation happened, it was like, oh, okay, well, there's a difference between crying and whining. And when this person cries, they also whine. And it's the whining I'm responding to. So how can I, protect their need to, emotionally express and honor the fact that there's a bunch of emotions that are getting expressed, which is a good thing, without necessarily encouraging the whine. So this is like the first time I'm connecting those dots. Be like, why is it such a problem for me that he cries all the time? Well, because I cry all the time. Yes. Good Lord. So, but I cry on kind of a regular basis. I think at least once a calendar month I can point to a day where I cry.
Any other man I know.
But sometimes, like most of the time when I cry, it's like you wouldn't know I was crying if you didn't see the tears.
Right.
Like my face doesn't change, my voice doesn't change. It's like I'm doing my normal thing, but they're just like there's stuff leaking out of my eyeballs. But it's still like an emotive crying. It's just all the stuff's happening in here. And but so we also haven't talked about the fact that I went back to finish my degree. Like we brought it up maybe a couple times, but it hasn't been like a thing. But I'm in a screenwriting class, and I'm tasked with writing a screenplay, and I've really zoned in on a concept that I really like, and it's based on a lot of different things. Like it's very autobiographical, but it's a bunch of different pieces that don't fit in together in the real world the way they do in the story. But if I were to tell the story to you, you could look at every single one of those things and be like, okay, that's where in his life those came from. So I've also noticed that all the elements I'm throwing in a blender to make this really neat story are all things that have a great amount of pain associated with them.
Past trauma?
And past and current and some fear of future. Like all of it. The whole thing's in there. And so as I've just been kind of like mulling this over, I've been it's all been in my head, and I've had serious writer's block with it. And then I have I'm in a stop motion animation class, which is where that little lamp thing came from. And I'm on another project that's due in like a week, and we've had a lot of time to work on it, and I haven't even started because I just went to the professor and I was like, I got nothing. I have no ideas. I'm completely blocked on this. I'm creatively blocked on all these things. And so then I was coming home from driving my kid to daycare one day, and then I just felt the thing in your chest where you know you're going to cry. And I just let it out, and it was kind of like the quiet cry with like the tears, and I had just happened to be listening to one of my favorite classical pieces, and so it was a nice little moment. And then I just kind of like, that was almost not even noteworthy. Then I get home, and I have a little like half-hour routine every time I get home that includes like feeding the dogs and changing the litter and all that stuff. And in the middle of that, I felt it like a tidal wave. Like it started with me just crying again, but then before it was over, I was like on my elbows and knees on the floor in the kitchen with my head in my hands, just sobbing. Like it was like
uncontrollable.
Yeah, like a good, solid, uncontrollable. Like I was whimpering, I was heaving, I was moaning. There was like sound, like the John Amaral. There was like sound and motion, and it was a mess. Like I had to wipe off the floor. I washed my face, washed my hands, but then when I was done, I just kind of picked myself back up and dusted myself off and just continued doing my thing. Because one of the things I've learned is I don't need to attach a story to it. There's not a, what am I crying about? What thing is happening that this is about? Like it might be about something, but that's less important to me than just the simple fact that there were emotions trapped in my body that needed to get out. I wasn't letting them out. I wasn't keeping them in, but I just wasn't really paying attention to whether or not they had an outlet. So they created one, and then they got out. And I could tell, like it's, when you're crying emotional tears as opposed to like, the any other version kind of tear that it's not the kind that waters your eyes. It's not the kind that happens when you cut onions. Like there's different tears.
I was going to say, how are they not emotional? But that makes sense. Like you're right.
Like
the onion
there's basil
thing.
tears, and so these are the ones where the actual emotional content that you're storing comes out in your tears, like your stress hormones, all the body chemistry that happens when you're holding emotions can be found in this specific type of tear, and you can tell when you're crying that type of tear. So I didn't attach a story to it, didn't even ask myself what I was crying about. I was like, okay, good, you were in there and you got out, that's great. It took about 90 seconds, and then I after that, I went back to ruminating on the screenplay, and all of a sudden things just started snapping into place. Like I was watching a puzzle solve itself. And questions I didn't even know I had got answers. And characters started connecting, and certain cause and effect pathways in the storyline started like building themselves. And all of a sudden, it's like I was watching the show in my mind's eye just play out. Like just almost fully complete, just right there. It just started doing itself. And so I started wondering, like, is there a correlation between pent-up creative energy and pent-up emotional energy? And I obviously was able to give emotional energy that release, and then all of a sudden, right on the tail end of that, my creative energy just exploded. Mm-hmm. So I sit down and I take all the momentum and I go into my screenwriting software and I'm pounding away at the keys, and then I hit a part where there's another hole I need to fill, and immediately from the back of my mind, this one part of my history comes and fills that hole and says, this is what goes there. But then the thing that's attached to hit a nerve, and then all of a sudden I'm on the floor of my office crying again. And this time I was like laying in the fetal position, and it was still like, you would think that someone I care about had just died from how heavily I was crying. Mm-hmm. And then I got up off the floor and I washed my hands, washed my face, and kept on typing. And then the thing happened even more. And then I went to my 2D, my stop motion thing, and all of a sudden I had great clarity on what I was going to do there. So I pumped out a storyboard and sent it to my professor, and it's like boom, 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 boom. And then yesterday, I was in class in a working session. And by in class, like it's all online right now. You just like logged into the Zoom thing. And I was supposed to be working on stop motion, and instead an entire fucking song came out. Like a whole song. It just like I just like watched it write itself. Yes. Like it just I don't even know how to explain it. Like I write complete songs pretty quickly anyway. Most of the time when a song hits me, it's like 85% done. All I got to do is like rearrange and fill in some blanks, right? Mm-hmm. But this thing was like a whole. It's like what Liz Gilbert talks about in Big Magic. Like it was its own entity and it was just looking for a conduit to come and be made tangible through. And I was that thing. And then boom, it's just sitting there on my computer. And I was like, where the fuck did this come from? And so I'm really like revisiting this idea that when you're blocked in one arena of your life, maybe you're blocked in other arenas, and maybe unblocking one unblocks the other, even if they don't necessarily, they're not things that you would put together. You know? And I haven't cried since. I haven't had another one of those crying fits. But I know I'm in a good spot because anytime I go back to my screenplay, I go back to my story and I kind of like mull it over, I can feel when I hit a nerve and it hits me right in the chest, and I'm like, oh, there's still some tears in there. And so now it's like a tool I can use where if I'm not in a place where I can like crumple into a heap on the floor and then write some stuff, I purposefully don't let it happen. But then it's almost like that's like a tool I've been given for getting over a creative block. Is like, if you're creatively blocked, there's a good not you. If I'm creatively blocked, there's a good chance that I am probably emotionally blocked somewhere, and opening one just might open the other.
Okay, so a couple of questions. First one is, what does that, because I don't know if everybody understands this or has even had this feeling, but what is the feeling in your chest, that thing that happens in your chest, I think is what you said. What does that feel like?
It feels, that's a good question. I'm so familiar with it, I forget that some people might not be.
Well, and I'm asking because most people walk around disassociated from their bodies, right? So, because feelings are physical. So when you we don't want to feel, it's uncomfortable. So we just stop feeling our body altogether, which means we may not even know that we need to cry, you know? And so if you can name or describe that feeling,
yes.
And then maybe that might oh, that's what that is. Maybe I need to cry.
Okay. So if I were to describe this to somebody who lives in their head, not in their body, I think one of the things that I could equate it to is it's like the butterflies in your chest when you're about to go on stage. If you're not
in your chest or your stomach.
Well, they say butterflies
in your chest.
They say butterflies in your stomach, but I always feel it right here.
Really? Right mine, I literally there's somersaults going on in my belly.
I don't ever feel it. Like maybe diaphragm is the lowest it goes, but I always feel it. I've always even said butterflies in your chest because I've heard that phrase, but I've never felt it down here in my guts.
Wow.
It's always right up here.
Okay.
So maybe the butterflies in your stomach,
torso
but
section,
only if they were moved up to your chest.
Okay.
But there's also, I don't want to say like heat or burning, but because it doesn't feel thermal in that way, but it's like
tingling, maybe.
Yeah, and there's almost like a pressure, like an outward pressure, like whatever's in there is like pushing up and pushing out. And so it's that, like those combination of things. Because I don't even like if I were to say tingling, I'm equating that to like when your leg is asleep and you have the pins and needles, and it's not quite like that. It's more like a buzzing or a humming. Like there's motion in there, and then there's like a pressure for it to move. But it's almost like there's a ceiling. So it's like picture a helium balloon up against the ceiling, like it's just bumping up there. And so when I feel that, I know that I'm about to cry. And then I don't feel it like in every little spot in my body between there, but then right behind my eyes, I feel like the inside of my head is about to explode. like again, there's this pressure. It's like a forward pressure right behind my eyes, and then that's probably more physiological. I'm sure that there's something happening with like tear ducts and things in there, but that's the feeling in my chest I'm talking about.
Because I also get a feeling in my chest, and it's that, but also it feels like the best way to describe it would be like heartburn, but without the acidity. Like it
like heat without the thermal.
Like it burns a little bit, and there's some pressure in there. And I like how you described the balloon bumping up against the ceiling, because that's kind of what it's like. Like it needs to just get out, and it's just stuck there.
I also feel that way when I feel anger, but not just anger. But I guess anger's too soft. Like rage. Like when I feel my body gearing up to enter a physical confrontation, which hasn't happened to me in probably more than a decade. But there was a time in my life that I was just like ready to start throwing punches, and when you're about to like enter into that space, your body kind of makes some physiological changes to
adrenaline.
Yeah. And so one of those is like when you feel like you're about to punch someone and you might get punched back. It's almost the exact same feeling in my chest. Except in that scenario, it's more. So if you are someone who has gotten in a fist fight, maybe the calm before the storm internal feeling of moving into it, but subdued, is another way to explain like
I know it's so hard to explain.
Right, yeah.
But it's a feeling though. It is most definitely a feeling.
It is a sensation that you feel in your body.
Yeah, that's what I should say, a sensation. Yeah. Go ahead.
So do you feel that feeling and then just not cry? Or have you just not even been feeling that feeling at all?
I haven't had the sensation at all in a long time. In a very long time. So I've tried, like I've cried and I've tried to force it. Like just come out. I'm not kidding. Like I've laid on the floor. I've like kicked my feet. I've tried to throw a tantrum. Like please just cry.
Think about really sad stuff.
Yes. Like,
maybe you'll get so upset about the fact that you're not crying that then you start crying over the fact that you can't cry. Just like reverse psychology, that shit. Trick myself into doing it. Yeah, I don't know. But I love that you've kind of made this correlation, because I think you are onto something. Because if you think about it, creativity requires flow, and it requires getting out of your mind. And flow happens when you are in your body and you're just allowing this information, these details, these ideas to just permeate out of your body. And so if there's something in the way, crying, of course, would get it out of the way. I think crying blocks, not the inability to cry, blocks flow. So am I not in flow? I was about to ask that. Do you feel emotionally blocked as well, or creatively blocked, or any other type of blockage?
Yes. D, all of the above.
You got it right this time.
But I don't know that I don't see. But now I'm back on. Like I don't know if crying's going to solve it. I think
maybe
there's
it's a
some
chicken
other
egg
things.
situation.
Right.
What if solving that thing opens up your ability to cry?
Yes, and it's not just the crying that would open that. Yeah, right. I know. I don't know. I have some things. I don't know. I do. I have some things that are on the radar. Not anything I'm willing to share yet.
Right.
In this venue. But I also have a session with Tony tomorrow, so I'll be curious to see if he validates anything for me. So
I get so excited when I hear that people are going to talk to Tony. like excited for them.
Yeah, because it's just really interesting information. Like what what he offers people and how healing and helpful it is.
Tony, do we want to talk about that but really quickly? But I don't know if you were going to save it to the end of the thing, but we have an announcement as it pertains to Tony.
Yes.
We are he's coming to one of our what I can't. I'm so excited.
R.
Yes, I'm going back to preschool, and today is brought to you by the letter R. He is going to be on one of our patron tribe calls. Mm-hmm. So we hop on a Zoom call every week with all of our patrons, and we, it's just part of the package. And one of the things that we're going to start doing is taking people that we've interviewed, or maybe people we haven't interviewed, but we think would just be really interesting to people to bring in, and he's gonna jump on one of our calls with us, and people will be able to like ask him questions, and just some maybe about his work, maybe about himself. I have some questions of my own, and so everyone's really excited about that. And that is happening. When is that happening?
March 16th.
March 16th, 2021. So, if anybody would like, if you've heard our Tony interview,
Episode 31.
Episode 31, and you would like to actually talk to the guy, then if you're a patron by or before that date, which is what? March
16th, 2021.
March 16th. I can only keep one number in my head at a time. then you'll get to talk to him, which is super exciting.
It is. He's a fascinating guy. He is. I mean, his whole life story. So I'm excited for our tribe members to explore that.
I just want to grab a beer with the guy.
Yeah. He's that kind of guy.
Like, it's one thing to sit in a session and to talk to the angels and have your mind blown and get all this really good information that you're going to be chewing on for like weeks and months afterwards. Mm-hmm. But then he's just also, I just want to grab a beer with the guy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really what True North is that's making a thing that we want to do and just inviting other people to pay us to let them do it with us.
It's just a journey. We're all on the same journey, so let's do it together. Let's support each other. That's what we're doing, creating
so you're gonna
a support
go see him
system.
tomorrow. Is it like a whole session or
it's
is it like a maintenance session? Does he do those? Does he do those where it's like here's the 2.5 hour intro and then
No. I always have to schedule a large block of time whenever I meet with Tony. There's a lot of information in there. I'm going to ask him about this question, though, about crying and see what it is. See if we can solve the chicken and egg dilemma.
Yes. Well, it makes sense because you, like, this type of crying, the emotional type of crying, there's something that is in you that needs to get expression, and the act of crying is getting it out of you. Mm-hmm. And that's legit what being generative is. Mm-hmm. That's what making art is. And so when we say creatively blocked, it's almost as though saying creatively blocked and emotionally blocked are just two different words for the exact same thing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So it feels like a huge epiphany to say, oh, those are linked, but they're more than that. They're not just linked. They are
one and the same.
Synonymous. Mm-hmm. And so it makes total sense that when I get emotionally unblocked, which happened I didn't use any of my tools to make that happen. It just happened on its own. Mm-hmm. And I'm just in the habit of letting my body kind of do what it wants. And so, of course, the second that the valve turned on there, then the creative energy just kind of was like, okay, here's what you've been missing.
Exactly. I have another correlation I've kind of been pondering lately about crying, which I didn't tell you about this offline. I think it's a huge component in the act of forgiveness. Here's why. A couple years ago, I took a class. I'm going to plug her because I think her work is wonderful, by Dr. Jane Gardner. It's called Divine Intelligence. Mm-hmm. I cannot remember the exact name of the class, but it's all about it's a lot about what we talk about, tapping into our true potential, right? And kind of getting out of our own way. And so a lot of the class is really diving deep into your old trauma. There's a lot more to it. I'm not doing it justice, but we can link to her work in the show notes. Yes. But at the end of this class, you had to go and do this self retreat where you go somewhere overnight alone, and you've been building up to this process throughout the whole entire class. And then this is sort of the culminating event. And I at that point had already gone through coaching school. I've already gone through several sessions of therapy. I thought I was done with my people, meaning all the people that caused me trauma, right? That's the funny lesson in life. Like, we're never really done, right? I thought I'd mastered my trauma in some way. Because I already did a lot of work on it, especially in coaching, because you have to be able to not be triggered when you're coaching, because you have to hold space for your clients. So I've done all that work, but so I'm going through this class with Dr. Jane, and I realize, like, I'm not done with my mom. I'm not done with my mom. And so I go on this retreat, and big mistake. I decided to stay in a hotel instead of get some like cabin or house or something. And I'm doing the exercise, and it happens to be about my mom. And all of a sudden I lose all control of my emotions. And I'm writing, and the pen, like, it's so digging into the paper that you can see it on the next page, right? Where there's no ink. And I'm just angry, and I'm mad, and I'm sad, and I'm all these feelings. And I'm writing it out. And then she asks you to, like, physically get it out, like find a pillow and start just punching the pillow. So I'm in a hotel room, and I start screaming and yelling and sobbing, like just that good, uncontrollable, deep weeping and sobbing. And this went on for I don't know how long, because I tried to stifle it for a little while, because I thought there's going to be a knock on your door. Your neighbors in the next room are going to hear this and think something's wrong. But finally I went into the shower and just let it go. I just took my pillow into the shower, and I let it go, and I got everything out that I needed to get out. And I finally realized that I needed to get to that place, and I needed to process through all of that in order to find the forgiveness I needed to have, to move on, to not be in her business anymore, to not let that trauma control me or control my behavior, my actions, or even my thoughts. And so it was an interesting experience, because I literally went in kind of self-righteous, like, I've already done all this. I had it all. And since then, it seems like if I go back and I note the times where I'm really trying to forgive somebody, there's other people in my life that have caused some major trauma that I have forgiven. The childhood abuse person, that, like, I spent a lot of time, and I finally realized, like, when I did the heavy crying about it, I was able to let it go, and I was able to forgive myself and not wonder why that happened to me or why I couldn't get myself out of it. I was able to forgive the other person. And so I've just kind of kept my curiosity open, that I do also think that it could be part of the forgiveness process. Like, and able to get to that place of forgiveness, crying allows you to get all the shame out, all the resentment, all the anger, everything you're storing that's blocking you from forgiving the person you need to forgive, even yourself.
Do you think forgiveness is a once and done thing? Like, once you really, really, really forgive somebody, like, you can just, the rest of your life, they are just continuously forgiven by you?
I think it depends. This will be an Abby answer. I think it depends on the nature of the act that you're forgiving. My forgiving of the abuse is a continual practice. I have to I had let's call it the big forgive, where I was able to let that person back into my life. I was able to have the conversations. What is that face?
There is music playing right now.
I cannot hear it.
No, it's in my earbuds, and it's super loud. And I have like 1 million tabs open right now. Oh my God. It is so loud.
You all have to go watch the YouTube and look at his face, because he's really into me and he's listening, and all of a sudden his eyes about pop out of his head.
It's like this upbeat like K-pop music that I don't even listen to. What the fuck? Oh my God. Okay.
Okay.
If anybody was wondering, there's a YouTube series called Every Frame of Painting where they talk about movies, and for some reason I had that open in a tab, and it just decided to start playing.
That's awesome.
Okay. I am like sweating now. That was terrifying.
Everything happens for a reason.
Oh
so
sorry about that.
No worries. So like in that case, I've had the big forgive where I could let that person back into my life. I can talk to them again. I can set my boundaries. And I've chosen to set my boundaries to let them back in. That's a personal choice. And so in doing so, it still requires constant practice to stay in that state of forgiveness.
Yes.
Because I have changed and I have worked on myself. The other person in many ways has not. And so my buttons can still be easily triggered because they're saying and doing a lot of the same things. Or there's personality traits that might trigger something that led, to the, whatever the case is. So it constantly looks different. So for me in that case, it is a constant act of forgiveness.
Yes.
But in other times, where it's something that is important, but not on that level of emotional trauma, I think it can be, if repaired well, I think it can be a one and done thing.
Oh, sure. Okay,
because if it's not, then one or more parties is holding a grudge.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. There are a bunch of ruptures that have since been repaired that I don't feel the need to go back and continuously stay in a state of forgiveness. Like it's already happened and it's over. Yeah.
Because if not, you're just putting, because then you're putting a condition on that person. Well, you remember that one time you did that thing.
Right.
That's what forgiveness is you have to be able to move on from it. But I think I do think it kind of depends on what you're forgiving or if it's a person and what that person has done to you.
Yeah. We tend to say things in past tense like that. Like I know a lot of people in the LGBTQ community who have talked about when they came out, and when you've only heard a few of those stories, you picture someone sitting down with their parents and then saying, "I'm gay," and then that's it. Like, and now all of a sudden they're out of the closet. But a lot of times it takes years. It takes years to come out, right? And the first person you have to come out to is yourself a lot of the time, and that could take years,
lifetime.
Right? Yeah. So when someone talks about how they came out, they'll say it in past tense, but they might still be coming out. You know?
Yes.
And so then you have all these dots that are connecting for me is how, like, I talk about how I will have fallen in love with somebody. But that's not just something that happened where one day I wasn't in love with them and then for every other day since then I was. Like every time they do something I love, I fall in love with them again as though it was the first time. Or how many marriage seminars have we gone to where they say, like, it's not that you chose your partner on your wedding day. Every single day you wake up and you continue to choose them. My dad stopped hitting us. It's when he stopped hitting us, it wasn't like, okay, now I don't have to worry about it. Every single fucking day he had to wake up and decide not to hit us. Until it became more of a habit, right? But there was probably a several year long. And of course, we grew from little kids into teenagers. I'm sure that as we hit teenagers, we hit a whole new collection of buttons that he then had to continue to decide not to, hit us over. And so I'm starting to put together all these things where we talk about things like their past tense, like a switch flipped. But really, it's a lifestyle choice. And so when you talk about going into the shower of your hotel and letting it all out, that being a barrier that you need to go through to get to a place where you could forgive your mother, what the picture that painted itself in my head while you were talking was that moment gave you a taste of what it looks like to be on the other side of that in a state of forgiveness, as though it's like giving you it's giving like the free trial of a service, and then you get to monthly subscribe to it to keep doing it, right? Like now I know what that looks like and tastes like and feels like. I can use that as a barometer to say, am I going back to that place now when XYZ thing continues to trigger me? Right? Because the things that trigger us are the little younger versions of ourselves that are still in there. But my 7-year-old self will not ever grow out of being a 7-year-old self. Like I have my 8-year-old self and my 7-year-old self. And so they're both stuck there. And for as long as I'm alive, that 7-year-old self is still going to be triggered by the things that 7-year-old me was triggered by always. And so I'm the kind of the picture I'm putting together is the reason that we call it a crying practice and not just, I cried and now it was unblocked, is because it's about putting yourself in a state where these things that our words indicate our past tense are really actually something that we continually choose to live in, and we fall out of it, and then we go back into it. And when we have those moments of great clarity, or the moments of great release, or the moments where things snap into place, it's easy to fall into this mindset. Well, now that obstacle's out of the way forever. You know, now I've done the thing. I have forgiven. I have done the thing. But then you wake up the next day, and it may be something you have to choose to do again, as though you haven't, or quote unquote, arrived.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point to make, because, you know, I even have examples of exactly what you're talking about. I have a member of my family that I love and adore, and it took him almost 50 years to come out of the closet.
Damn.
Yeah. To accept that in himself and everything. And then, yeah, I mean, I remember, did I tell you that I pulled my old journals from like 98 to 2003? Yes, this is why you should keep these. Because more evidence, because I know you throw things away. You need to keep them. Away. Don't do it. Yes. You need to keep them. Oh my gosh, I got so much information. Some things about grams came full circle from 20 years ago. Like, it's just crazy to me what I read. But one of the entries happened to be that the very first person that I told that I was a lesbian was my sister. And I very clearly remember it. We were sitting in a Chinese restaurant, and I know I was so nervous, right? Like, leading up to this, you've heard this, like, to tell your family something that they might not want to hear is incredibly scary, because she means a whole lot to me, which is why I wanted to tell her first. But she also grew up in a religious household, you know, and had a lot of religious beliefs and kind of all the things that we've talked about in the past. What do you call them? Fundamentalism? Is that what it is? Yeah. That's what drove her, you know, that's part of her identity at that time. Still is in many ways, but sort of that was her lens. So when we're sitting down at lunch and I'm telling her, and I couldn't even say the words, I'm a lesbian. I couldn't even say the words, I'm gay. I just simply said, I'm dating a woman. I couldn't even say it to the one person that's like my best friend in the whole world. I couldn't tell her. And the very worst, my worst fear of what could happen happened.
Oh no.
She got mad at me.
Oh no.
She started reciting passages from the Bible and telling me that it's wrong. And I was mortified, because I felt like I had just disappointed her. I in some way let her down, because I wasn't this person she thought I was. And to her, that meant everything, to live by those values of the Bible. And it crushed me. And it was a very long 24 hours. And I say that because this is the beautiful human that is my sister, comes back after 24 hours and says, you know what? I love you and I know you, and this doesn't change you. While I still struggle with it, and I still, you know, she still was like battling her religious belief systems, she still she still decided to show up and choose me, because it didn't change me. It just changed who I liked, who I was interested in, who brought me safety and security. And she could look at all my experiences, she could look at my past and connect the dots and understand why this was a better choice for me, why this worked for me, why it made me feel safe. And anyway, since that day, it's like it's never been a problem since. But that was like really early 2000s when I gave her that information. And even to the point where, well, here, this was many years later, and I'm working at the Richardson YMCA, and I meet you, and none of you knew I was gay. At least I don't think.
People suspected.
Okay, but I wasn't, like, I had never
you weren't officially out. Right. And nobody was about to ask you.
Yeah. And this is
Right.
years later. And because I was still in that process of figuring out how to do that. So I just, all that to say, like, that is such a beautiful example of what you're trying to say, where this is a continual process.
Yes.
It's not something that you really master.
Well, that's also like, yes. And then the language that we use speaks to our relationship with that idea. Because like you said, you went into that training thinking you had done all of this stuff. I've already done all this work. I've already learned all these lessons. This is all in my past. And when you have that mindset, it closes you off to that learning being in your present.
Yes.
Right? And
It very much did for me. Yeah.
Yes. And so the only lesson to really learn is how to continue to learn the lesson. You know? And so when I catch myself saying something about me in the past tense, like I've already jumped that hurdle or I've already reached this landmark or whatever. Now I'm at a point where I'm starting to critique, is thinking that this thing is in my past precluding me from experiencing it in my present because it's something I need to experience in my present. And oftentimes thinking you've arrived somewhere is what actually means you haven't. Because what got you to arrive there was the striving to arrive there. And then once you have gotten the thing that you think you wanted, you've hit the goalpost, the striving to get there is gone. And it's the striving that was the arriving. It was the doing the work. And so when I think about, have I forgiven XYZ person? Well, now my question is, do I still need to continue forgiving them? Am I in the process of forgiving them? And this goes back to what, like, the last download I got from my spirit guide, the one that's teaching me how to heal. The last time I talked about her was when she kind of whispered in my ear that my healing was for me, not for me to just give out to everybody else. Which actually makes a lot of sense. I'm like, there's a chapter in my life where I'm supposed to be giving it out, but it's not, I'm not in a place yet, which is why I've had so many issues trying to be a quote unquote healer so far. But I've been trying to use it on me and I've been learning a lot of things. And then since then I've gotten I had one good conversation where she kind of like didn't wait for me to knock, just like burst down the door and started talking like, okay, you need to hear this. And what she was saying was that you haven't healed from anything ever. You either are in a state of healing or you are not in a state of healing. And so if you think, oh, I'm healed from that, guess what? That's when it comes back. And so when I say I am a healer, it's because I perpetually do the act of healing. Because healing is all that there is. There is no healed. And if something was a problem and is no longer a problem, that just means that you've shifted into a state of perpetually healing from that thing so that even if it were to take foot, it doesn't have a place. And that's why things come back, because then you've shifted out of a state of healing from that thing. And so now there's space for it to be there and take hold. And so now when I talk about like if there's a problem with my body, I don't say, oh, I have these symptoms. I say I'm healing from these symptoms. And that's my way of, if I have to like... I don't know how many situations I'm in where I just have to talk about, like if I'm telling someone like, oh, I think I have a cold or something, like that seems like just a statement of fact, but you know just as well that if you say that out loud, what does that do to the world around you, to your body, to, you know? And so if I'm going to give voice to it, it's going to be, I'm healing from this thing. And that was just, it was kind of a mind blow for her to just come and say like this whole past tense, it's already happened. It's done. I've done the thing. That just get rid of that in your vocabulary. It's all about what state you are in. I'm in a state of healing, or I'm not. I'm in a state of forgiving. I'm in a state of growing. I am in a state of learning. There is no I have grown. I have learned. I mean, technically you could if you were to look at a timeline, but I think all of the spiritual voices I'm listening to are also talking about how time is a construct of the mind and it's not really helpful except for in the development of the ego to continue to think that it is you, you know? And so in that state, like if I think something's in the past, well, for all intents and purposes it is, but everything that it was is no longer here. It's like I took a math class and then I didn't do math for 10 years. I can't sit there and say, oh, I still know these things. I probably don't. They're gone. I had to have continued to practice it in order to be able to retain that stuff.
Right. I feel like what you're saying is another way of saying that you're not to attach outcomes, because you attach the outcome of I'm healed, then you completely block yourself, like you said, from learning anything in the present.
Right.
That's interesting. So constantly being in this state of being open, being curious, unattached to any outcome. I think I even said to you this morning before we even jumped on this call that I didn't want to say something out loud because exactly what you were saying, it was going to breathe life into it. Like if I say this out loud, it's here. I've just created the thing that I didn't really want to create. So thank you for saying what you said, because it's made me realize I need to change my language around it, the perception of it.
Yeah, it's
because I'm attaching an outcome.
Right. Even if you're just stating what is. I mean, it may be that that's the case, but you still have the ability to affect reality with how you state what is. It's kind of like how you didn't want to say I'm a lesbian, you didn't want to say I'm gay, so you found another way to say what you were trying to say that circumvented the words you didn't want to use because they were loaded. You found another thing that's not loaded. So it's like find another way to say the thing that doesn't carry all the baggage. And all of a sudden it's, I'm healing from a sore throat instead of I have a sore throat.
Yeah.
I am forgiving that person. And going back to forgiving, I also, in my past, in my relationship, there was a chapter where if I had done something wrong, I didn't want to own it. And then I moved to a place where I could own it, and then I would apologize. But in that place, once I gave the apology, it was loaded with an expectation that it would be forgiven and forgotten. And if that didn't happen instantly, I would then make it her problem that she didn't immediately snap back to just everything was fine.
This is a good question then. Is forgiveness for the other person or for you?
Well, I think it's for you. Back then, I didn't. Back then, it was, I've done my part. I've apologized. You now have to do your part and forgive me. Part of that is stop holding my feet to the fire now and forevermore. When that didn't happen, I would get pissed. And then, if then the same conversation happened again, I wouldn't even have it because I would say, we've already had this conversation. You see, I was so closed off because I wasn't holding space for the fact that forgiveness takes a while and it's not a once and done thing. I wasn't holding space for her to be even continuing to forgive me, much less while I was continuing to transgress in the way that necessitated the forgiveness. So moving forward, if there is rupture and I own my thing and there's not immediate repair, I can now hold space for the other person to, for me to at least acknowledge you're still in the process of cultivating forgiveness. And you may be in that process for years. And it's also not even my business anymore. But there was a time I really, really wanted to see, I messed up, I fixed it, we're all better. Why are we not all better? What's wrong?
Well, does that speak to she didn't, whatever happened, that was the reason why the forgiveness had to happen, is that she couldn't trust you?
Well, I'll give an example.
So it wasn't her act of accepting your forgiveness or your apology.
Well, some things just take a while to forgive, like you said.
Some things do, but I'm trying to think because we're kind of saying some different things. So I'm trying to figure out, again, if... I do think there are opportunities where it's a one and done thing. And so I was like, well, what example do I have? But then even, for example, when I kind of lose my temper with my kid, it does happen occasionally. And so then I apologize because I was in the wrong and I don't want to be that person and show up that way. And even though he's 5, he still deserves that apology. And so to me, he forgives me. And it is a one and done thing. But at the same time, I'm also very mindful that he may have created a story about whatever caused me to blow up in the first place. So if that particular event happens again, I'm very mindful then about how I show up.
Right.
But to me, that's different than he's not continually forgiving me. It's like he's forgiven me and moved on. But now it speaks to, does he trust me?
Yeah, there's still something to be said for a pattern. You can forgive someone and still not trust them if they have a pattern of not being trustworthy.
Yeah.
But so here's a concrete example. I went to film school. I went to college for cinema, and then before I graduated, I started a production company. with a buddy of mine. And we did short films that ran the film festival circuit and did some commercials for small local businesses, et cetera, et cetera. And I got so into that with my business partner. And we were like hitting the pavement and we were doing everything. It was the first podcast I ever tried to produce. And my wife was just like, you are so on it with this production company. Mm-hmm. And you're so not at home. Like, you're not even here. You're not paying attention anymore. You're not, even when your body's present, your mind isn't. And you miss things. And I'm basically the office manager of the entire house. I'm the project manager of the whole household. And you're just kind of here. But when you're here, you're not here. And you're not participating. You're not helping me out. You're not backing me up. You don't have my back. And you let things slip and you forget about things. And you just don't care. But with this production company, you do. All your I's are dotted. All your T's are crossed. You are on it there. And you're off here. And that's not okay with me. And the real kicker was when she said, I think this other guy that you're doing business with is more important to you than I am. Mm. And I said, because I was trying to be honest, I think you're right. In my mind, in that moment, it was kind of a badge of honor not to push back, not to defend myself, not to give excuses, not to tell her how she's wrong or to make her problem, not to make her the problem, right?
Not to get defensive, yeah.
But then I had to sit there and think about the fact that I just said that out loud to my wife in a mode that looked and felt like honesty, because it was. And at the end of that conversation, boy, did I take a step back from that production company. And eventually the whole thing unraveled and we closed up shop. But it was something I felt like I needed to do to build into a marriage that was failing because this other thing had taken its place. And I'm still friends with the guy. She's not. There was a time that he and his wife and me and her, we would all go do stuff. And since that day, we haven't. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, I made it a big problem for myself that she wasn't open to that friendship. She didn't even like it when I talked to the guy. And I really kind of held it against her for a long time. Like, look, I admitted the thing. I fixed the thing. That's not an obstacle to our relationship anymore. I'm doing all this repair, and you're still mad. And if I had the perspective that I do now, I would have realized that was an egregious trespass on our marriage. And it's not something that could have been forgiven overnight. And it took years. Mm-hmm. I mean, she didn't even really want to forgive it at first, and I don't really blame her. But then even once she kind of like came around, that's still a wound. That's a big, open, festering wound. Mm-hmm. You know? And so instead of making her the villain for not instantly just deciding that we're cool because I turned on a dime because of a conversation we had, I could have, held space for the fact that it takes a long time to heal from something like that. Mm-hmm. And so now what that does for me today is I am more well equipped to give people as much time as they need to heal from whatever they need to heal from. Mm-hmm. Which is huge when we talked about rupture and repair last time.
And well, absolutely. And it's their business how long that takes them. And that's where we have to it's hard, but we have to be patient and just let them do their thing and just hold space until they do. And if I want you to have arrived already at a place that you haven't yet arrived, then my work to do is on my attachment to where you are in your own journey, not where you are in your own journey. Exactly. Why do I want you to be elsewhere? Exactly. Because it'd be more comfortable for me? Well, then if I'm a life partner for you, how can I facilitate that in a way that's in your eye is good instead of in a way that's, me trying to get back to a life that I want to live? Mm-hmm. All that to say, I'm sure that came with some crying. I did notice that you would have normally cried telling the story of when Sarah got mad at you coming out, but there were no tears. I know. What's wrong with me? Like as a 4, as a 4, I have a big problem with this. Why can't I cry? I am allergic to that question. What's wrong with me?
What's wrong with anyone?
What's
period.
happened?
Me, you.
What's happened to me?
Yes. The kids right now are big on saying like, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your kid? They're doing so." I'm like, well, try a different question.
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
No. Ask a different question.
For the record, I do need to say this: my sister is a rainbow unicorn. She loves humans. She loves people. So don't get from this that she's in any way judgmental. She really is not, and she still has her religious belief system in place that works really well for her and supports her and meets her needs, but she's still a rainbow unicorn. So I just have to put that out there.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's really worth noting that she accepts you, and she didn't have to completely abandon her faith and become a heretic to do that.
Right.
There is room within even a conservative Christian theology to have all the love in the world and acceptance for LGBTQ people without any of this love the sinner, hate the sin bullshit. Like, I've met her. I know her well enough to know that she fully embraces everything you are.
Yes.
And that's huge for that to be within her theological framework,
right? Which
is still very Christian. That's so cool.
Yep. It is. She's a beautiful human. I talk about her all the time, but yeah, we're gonna have her on the show. I think she's gonna come on the show.
Yeah, the more I think about this, I think we should have your sibling on and we should have my sibling on.
Yes, we really should.
Because
it'll be interesting.
Half of my show notes and the little stuff we should talk about in our episodes in the document comes from I have weekly conversations with him, and a lot of times we'll be sitting there and I'm just typing away. I'm like, I don't want to lose this. This is good stuff. I mean, lately all we've been doing is talking about politics, because he moved to Japan, and so he has a really interesting perspective on what's going on over here.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, there's just so much gold in conversations with him that it'd be really, really cool. I think.
I agree.
What are you, other than Sarah and your babysitter?
Yes. What am I grateful for today? I am grateful for crying. I am grateful for crying. Oh gosh, I miss it. I really miss it, because something, just like we're talking about today, something always moves within me when I can reach that place of a deep cry. And it's just sort of ritualistic for me. And so when you don't have it, you certainly notice that it's gone. That's the place I'm sitting in right now. And I'm on a journey of figuring that out and getting that out of the way so I can get my cry back. And so I am grateful for crying, and just what a fantastic, this is the body just fascinates me. It's like you crying and not even really knowing where that's coming from. And we don't have to know. That's literally just our body's built-in response to process a physical emotion that may not be in consciousness, so that we can have energetic flow. Like, I just...
Right.
Wow. Like, the body's just really cool. So yes, I am grateful for crying.
Yes. I don't even know what I was crying about, and I haven't even asked. Like, that's a question that we decided we need to know, but we don't really need to know what I'm crying about.
If you need to know, you're going to know.
Yeah, like a lot of times you're having a thought and the thought makes you cry, so obviously you're crying about something that thought was attached to. But if it just comes out of the blue, let it leave back into the blue. It's a thing that happened, and you're probably going to have some other unblockage later somewhere else.
Right. And that's when we get in trouble, is when we start trying to get desperate and figure out what it means. And sometimes it doesn't mean anything. It's literally just your body doing its thing.
Right. And most things don't really mean anything until we give it a meaning. Like,
exactly.
That's another episode that we can talk about.
Yes, it is.
I have so many. Okay, so I think most of my gratitudes this year so far have been for some anonymous friend I have who has some weird influence in my life. And this is another one of those friends who is extremely curious as a person, who I'll just say something about myself, or about life or whatever, and they'll just be like, "Oh, I wonder why that is." And it's not like the way people say it when they're making a point. Like, it's not like a little backhanded "told you so" or whatever.
Right. It's
like, I was just really playful one day, and they were like, what makes you playful? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm in a good mood. I haven't been in a good mood in the last forever. And they were like, I wonder why you haven't been in a good mood. And then, we're off to the races. Just curiosity, right? And it's gotten to the point where if I'm about to say something to this person, I then hear the "I wonder why" already in my head, and then I do all the process. I'll start a conversation, be like, you know what, you're right. I really should look into this thing. Like just
What?
They're like, what? You're welcome. And so I just, and this also happens to be a person who is such a safe place where I'll just say something that I don't feel comfortable telling anybody else, and then just saying it to them. I realize how silly it is to not want people to know it. And then almost then like the next day I'll like post it on Facebook or some like a super public, here's the thing about me, I pee sitting down, right? They were the first person I said that to. And so like it's just like this, just a person in your life who just listens well. There's no judgment. There's only safety and a lot of curiosity. And every time I just have a conversation with them, I end up just like with stuff to chew on, you know?
That's a person that walks in love and light.
I am super grateful for that person.
Yeah.
I'm gonna nickname these people. I'm gonna give them aliases.
Okay.
This one's name is Mo.
Mo. Okay.
I'm
Awesome.
grateful for Mo today.
Mo, you sound
Anytime
amazing.
I
Can we be
talk about
friends?
anytime I talk about Mo, I'm just gonna call them Mo now. I'm
Okay.
gonna nickname all of my people so that eventually I'll have it's gonna be like a collection of names that aren't really names.
Are they going to then, behind the scenes, be like, am I Mo or am I Frank?
How many people out there are Mo? It's like the Blue Man Group. Like everyone's just a part of it. You don't know how many there are out there.
You're just a blue man. Yeah.
We are Mo. Okay. Well, I'm grateful for Mo. I can't raspberry very well because my tongue doesn't work.
Okay.
Okay. So I forgot we were still recording. Until next time.
Why is that? No, I'm just...
Have I not told you about my incredibly short tongue?
No. That's really
It's connected
a
to
random fact.
the base of my mouth at the very tip. Like I can't stick it out. Like,
They normally, like, that's a thing now where they'll cut that in babies.
Yeah, if
That's
they can't suck. That's the
interesting.
thing, is if they can't
Yeah.
latch, then they do it. But I there's just enough tongue where I could latch, so they didn't do it.
Interesting.
But I can't stick my tongue out. It doesn't work. Blah, blah, blah. Until next time. The first person I told that to was Mo. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
Bye. Oh my God. That's hysterical. We are grateful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what we're doing and you want more, then you can join our tribe to interact with other like-minded individuals. You can go through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/True North Podcast 11.
Is it Podcast 11 or is it True North 11?
Oh, shit.
It's in our show notes. If you want more than that, you want some more hands-on healing stuff that we do, I do actual energy healing and body work, and Abby does life coaching and workshops. And you can find the URLs in our show notes when we figure out what they are.
And we are always trying to increase our reach and bring more people to find their true north. So we would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and rate it in whatever podcast platform you use.
Done. That's perfect. That was
What about
perfect.
the gratitude?
Oh, this one. Hang on. And one last thing. What are you grateful for? There. I said it. I said the thing.